She became a global television and film icon, recognized everywhere for her seemingly invulnerable on-screen persona. But behind those bright cameras and that perfect smile, she fought silent, relentless battles. She was a child star who navigated a deeply turbulent reality, and she tragically left us far too soon. Welcome to Learning English with Rassa. You know, our story actually begins before Hayden Panettiere could even speak. At just 11 months old, she was thrust directly into the bright, demanding spotlight of American television. Her mother, who was a former soap opera actress herself, saw an opportunity and cast her baby in a toy train commercial. And this wasn't just a brief little moment on TV, it was literally the start of a lifelong career. Hayden grew up entirely on sets, dealing with the relentless pressure of intense stage parenting. The expectations were just astronomically high. She had to be absolutely perfect day in and day out. This kind of extraordinary pressure to maintain a flawless image led to a really dark turning point early on. When she was only 15 years old, she was given amphetamines, those powerful stimulant drugs, just to help her stay awake and energized during these incredibly long red carpet events and interviews. It was an environment that demanded an energy level she simply didn't naturally have.
By the time Hayden hit her teenage years, she already had a resume that would rival actors 3 times her age. I mean, she was a true industry veteran. She spent her entire childhood starring in major daytime soap operas, like One Life to Live and Guiding Light, handling some incredibly heavy, dramatic storylines. But her talent wasn't just limited to daytime TV. She captured our hearts in major films like Remember the Titans, acting right alongside Hollywood legends. And honestly, perhaps most impressively, her voice acting as Princess Dot in Pixar's A Bug's Life actually earned her a Grammy nomination. She was only 9 years old at the time. That made her one of the youngest Grammy nominees in the entire history of the awards.
Then, in 2006, everything shifted. Hayden went from being a successful child actor to an absolute global phenomenon. She was cast as Claire Bennett in the massive hit sci-fi series Heroes. Claire was this high school cheerleader with a pretty remarkable superpower, rapid cellular regeneration. Basically, she was completely invulnerable. If she got hurt, her body just instantly healed. The show's famous catchphrase, "Save the cheerleader, save the world," became a massive pop culture sensation. It was printed on millions of t-shirts and posters. Hayden, usually seen in her iconic cheerleader uniform, became the definitive face of that mid-2000s Y2K aesthetic. Suddenly, she was everywhere, on magazine covers, at comic conventions, and just totally embedded in the cultural mood boards of an entire generation.
But here's the thing about Hayden. She was never content just being a celebrity. She really wanted to use her massive platform for change. She developed this profound and pretty radical approach to environmental activism. Her most courageous moment definitely came in 2007 when she was just 18 years old. She actually traveled to Taiji, Japan with a group of environmentalists to physically protest the annual dolphin hunt. She paddled out on a surfboard directly into the water, trying to form a protective circle around the dolphins and actually clashing with local fishermen. This intense confrontation was caught on camera and later featured in the Oscar-winning documentary The Cove. She was passionate, completely fearless, and entirely dedicated to being an advocate for creatures who just had no voice. Now, while television made her a household name, Gen Z gamers and slasher film fans hold a very specific, cherished place for Hayden in their hearts. She completely redefined what it meant to be a modern female horror fan. Back in 2011, she played Kirby Reed in the movie Scream 4. Kirby was fast-talking, incredibly smart, and just obsessed with horror trivia. When her character was seemingly killed off, fans flat-out refused to accept it, campaigning passionately online for over a decade. And guess what? They won. She made a triumphant return in 2023's Scream 6. Alongside this, she provided the voice and physical motion capture for Sam Giddings in the interactive survival horror game Until Dawn. Sam was the ultimate final girl, the absolute toughest survivor of the group. Through these roles, Hayden was basically immortalized in horror media forever. Moving away from cheerleaders and horror, Hayden showcased yet another spectacular talent, her singing voice. In 2012, she took on the really complex role of Juliet Barnes in the musical drama series Nashville. Juliet was a troubled, fiercely ambitious country music star, and Hayden's performance was just spectacular, earning her 2 Golden Globe nominations. She didn't just act the part either. She actually sang the songs, sending multiple tracks straight to the top of the real-life country music charts. But while Juliet Barnes was masking her pain with fame and success on screen, Hayden was beginning to mask a deeply turbulent reality off-screen.
Behind the scenes, the immense pressure of her lifelong career and her personal struggles really began to break her. After the birth of her daughter Kaya in 2014, Hayden suffered from severe, debilitating postpartum depression. To cope with that overwhelming anxiety and pain, she unfortunately began heavily relying on opioids and alcohol. She later admitted, "I felt like I completely lost myself." She described it as this horrible cycle of substance abuse that she just couldn't break on her own. And then, in an act of heartbreaking, profound love for her child, she made the agonizing decision to sign over full custody of her daughter to her ex-fiancé, Vladimir Klitschko. She knew it was the only way Kaya could have stability while she sought treatment and rehab. The years that followed were incredibly dark for her. Hayden found herself trapped in an abusive relationship, which frequently made devastating headlines. But the absolute most shattering blow came in February 2023. Her younger brother, Jansen, who was also her best friend and only sibling, died suddenly at the age of 28 from an enlarged heart. The grief was entirely consuming. The shock of his death broke her spirit in ways she had never experienced before. That trauma and loss actually triggered severe agoraphobia, which is a terrifying anxiety disorder that made her afraid to even leave her own home. The physical and emotional toll was just immense. But Hayden was a fighter. In early 2026, she began to emerge from the shadows, stepping back into the public eye with this radical vulnerability. She released a deeply honest, raw memoir titled This Is Me, A Reckoning. In it, she hid nothing. She wrote candidly about her addiction, the stage parenting, and her journey toward healing, and she did it completely without shame. Around the same time, she stepped behind the camera as an executive producer and star of what would ultimately be her final film, a psychological thriller called Sleepwalker. It really seemed like she was finally reclaiming a narrative that deeply resonated with her fans, finding her footing, and looking forward to a new, healthier chapter in Hollywood. Tragically, though, that new chapter was cut incredibly short. On August 16, 2026, the world received shocking news. Hayden Panettiere was found deceased in her apartment in South Carolina. She was only 36 years old. Authorities quickly confirmed there were no signs of foul play. The news sparked this massive outpouring of grief from co-stars, directors, and millions of fans around the world who had practically grown up with her. Her father released a touching tribute that beautifully captured her spirit, calling her an incredible light and a force of nature. She left behind a legacy defined by brilliant talent, fierce activism, and a deeply human struggle for peace. Okay, let's transition now to look closely at 10 important words from Hayden's story. Our first word is profound. The American pronunciation is profound. Notice how the stress is right there on the second syllable. As an adjective, profound means very great or intense, usually referring to an emotion, a state, or an impact. We can actually trace its origin back to the Latin word profundus, where pro means forward or downward, and fundus means bottom. So literally, it means going all the way to the bottom. Now, a quick synonym distinction for you. You might be wondering how profound is different from deep. Well, while both can describe a hole in the ground, profound is almost exclusively used for abstract concepts. A thought, a sadness, or an impact is profound because it requires intense intellectual or emotional depth to truly understand. Notice exactly how this word functions in these sentences. The loss of her younger brother caused profound sadness. Her activism had a profound impact on environmental awareness. She made profound changes to her life to focus on recovery. So, in that first sentence, profound emphasizes that the sadness wasn't just a normal level of everyday grief. It was intense, heavy, and deeply rooted in her soul. In the second sentence, it shows us that her impact wasn't superficial at all. It fundamentally changed how people viewed the issue. And in that final sentence, profound changes tells us she didn't just make small daily adjustments. She completely transformed her life from the bottom up. Our second word is invulnerable. It's pronounced invulnerable. It is an adjective meaning impossible to harm or damage. Looking at the etymology, it comes from Latin. The prefix in means not, and vulnerare means to wound. So quite literally, it means not able to be wounded. It's really important to distinguish invulnerable from invincible. You see, if you are invincible, you cannot be defeated or conquered in a fight or a game. But if you are invulnerable, you cannot even be physically or emotionally hurt or damaged in the first place. Listen to how we use this word to describe her life. On television, she played an invulnerable teenager who could heal instantly. Fame made her look invulnerable to the public. Despite her invulnerable image, she struggled deeply behind closed doors. Notice how in the first sentence we use it literally. Her character physically could not be permanently harmed. But in the second and third sentences, we're using it metaphorically. The public thought she was emotionally invulnerable to the pressures of Hollywood, but that contrast highlights her actual, very real human vulnerability off-screen.
Word number 3 is advocate. Now, this word is unique because its pronunciation actually changes depending on exactly how you use it. When used as a noun representing a person, we say advocate. But when used as a verb, meaning the action of supporting, we say advocate. It means a person who publicly supports or recommends a particular cause or policy, or the act of doing so. It comes from the Latin advocatus, which means someone called to another's aid, usually in a court of law.
Let's see this dual pronunciation in action here. Hayden was a passionate advocate for marine wildlife. She used her platform to advocate for mental health awareness. As an advocate, she traveled to Japan to protect the dolphins. In the first and third sentences, advocate is a noun, advocate, describing exactly who she was, a person defending animals. In the second sentence, it is a verb, advocate, describing the action she took using her voice to support mental health awareness.
Our fourth word is turbulent, pronounced Turbulent. This is an adjective characterized by conflict, disorder, or confusion, not controlled or calm. You might actually know it from flying in an airplane when you experience turbulence. The root of the word is the Latin turba, which translates to a crowd, a mob, or a disturbance. When things are turbulent, they are chaotic and unsettled, much like a riotous crowd.
Observe how this word sets a scene. Her late 20s were a highly turbulent period in her life. She navigated a turbulent relationship that frequently made the news. Despite her turbulent personal life, she continued to perform beautifully. In all three of these sentences, turbulent effectively sets a scene of emotional storms and instability. Instead of just saying her life was difficult or bad, using turbulent gives you, the listener, a strong visual of emotional ups and downs, absolute chaos, and a lack of peace during those specific years.
Moving right along to our fifth word, relentless. Pronounced relentless, it is an adjective that means oppressively constant or unyielding. If someone or something is relentless, it never stops, it never takes a break, and it never weakens. The structure of this word is pretty interesting. The base word is relent, which means to become less severe or to give in. By adding the suffix less, which means without, we create a word that means without giving in or without stopping.
Listen closely to the contrast in these three sentences. The relentless pressure of child stardom took a heavy toll on her. She faced relentless media scrutiny every time she left her house. Her brother's relentless support helped her through the darkest days. In the first two sentences, relentless describes something negative, pressure and scrutiny that simply would not stop, feeling incredibly heavy and oppressive. But in the third sentence, it describes something positive. Her brother's support was relentless, meaning his love and help were constant and never weakened, no matter how bad things got.
Word number 6 is immortalize, pronounced immortalize. It is a verb meaning to confer enduring fame upon someone or something, to make someone live forever in memory. The structure here is wonderful. Mortal means subject to death. The prefix im means not, so immortal means living forever. Adding the suffix "ize" turns it into a verb, the literal action of making someone or something live forever. Let's apply this to her legacy. Her iconic cheerleader role will immortalize her in television history. Video games helped immortalize her voice for an entirely new generation. Fans want to immortalize her legacy by sharing her activism work. In narration, using immortalize really elevates the concept of memory. We aren't just saying people will remember her. We are saying her work is so significant that her image and voice are permanently fixed in culture, effectively defeating death by living on in art and media forever. Our seventh word is resonate, pronounced resonate. It's a verb meaning to produce a positive feeling, an emotional response, or a shared opinion. It comes from the Latin resonare, meaning to sound again or to echo. A quick distinction for you. You can relate to a situation by simply understanding it logically, but if a story resonates with you, it strikes an emotional chord deep inside you, almost like an echo of your very own feelings.
Notice the deep emotional connection in these sentences. Her radical vulnerability continues to resonate with Generation Z. The themes of her memoir resonate deeply with anyone facing addiction. Her honest interviews resonate because they are entirely unpolished. In these sentences, resonate shows that Hayden's words didn't just reach people's ears, they vibrated with their own personal experiences.
It implies a really deep emotional connection between the speaker and the listener, built on shared truth and empathy. Word number 8 is candid, pronounced can-did. It's an adjective meaning truthful and straightforward, completely frank and honest. The etymology is quite poetic, actually. It comes from the Latin word candidus, which means shining white or pure. Over centuries, the meaning evolved from pure physical whiteness to pure, unhidden truth in a person's words or actions. Pay attention to how candid removes the PR filter here. She wrote an incredibly candid memoir about her life. In a candid interview, she finally explained her absence from Hollywood. Fans appreciated her candid discussion about postpartum depression. Using candid in these sentences tells us that Hayden wasn't using a public relations filter. She wasn't hiding behind polished, fake Hollywood answers. She was offering the pure, unvarnished truth, which is rare and highly respected. Our 9th word is emerge, pronounced emerge. It's a verb that means to move out of or away from something and come into view, or to become apparent or known. It derives from the Latin emergere, meaning to bring to light or rise up out of a liquid. To distinguish it from appear, something might just appear suddenly out of thin air, but emerge implies a process of slowly coming out of hiding, darkness, or a difficult situation right into the light. Let's analyze how this word visualizes a journey in these examples. In 2026, she began to emerge from her long hiatus. New details continue to emerge about her tragic final days. She hoped to emerge from her struggles stronger than before. In the first and third sentences, emerge paints a very vivid picture of Hayden's actively climbing out of a dark, difficult place, her hiatus and her personal struggles, back into the light of the public eye. In the second sentence, it describes facts slowly coming to the surface for the public to finally see. Our final vocabulary word is tribute, pronounced tribute. It is a noun meaning an act, statement, or gift that is intended to show gratitude, respect, or admiration. Historically, it traces back to the Latin tributum, which was a stated payment or a tax given by one ruler to another as a sign of submission or respect. Today, we use it to describe acts of deep honor, especially after someone has passed away. Let's look at our final set of examples. Co-stars posted beautiful tributes on social media after she passed. The documentary serves as a tribute to her environmental activism. Her father's statement was a touching tribute to her bright spirit. In these sentences, tribute perfectly summarizes how people reacted to her death. They didn't just make casual comments, they offered deliberate, respectful acts of honor to show how much they truly valued her life and her impact on the world. Okay, let's briefly recap our words to really lock them into your memory. We started with profound, meaning very great or intense, like the deep, profound sadness Hayden's family felt. Then, invulnerable, impossible to harm. Remember, invincible is about winning, but invulnerable is about not getting hurt, just like her famous television character. Advocate is someone who supports a cause, like her brave fight for the Dolphins. And turbulent, characterized by conflict and disorder, perfectly describing the chaotic, stormy middle years of her life. Next, we learned relentless, meaning oppressively constant, never stopping, just like the intense media scrutiny she constantly faced as a young star. Immortalize means to confer enduring fame upon someone, making them live forever. Hayden's voice and acting will immortalize her for entire generations of gamers. And resonate, producing a positive emotional response or echo. Her radical honesty didn't just inform people, it resonated with them deeply in their own lives. Finally, we covered candid, meaning completely truthful and frank, the exact way she wrote her memoir. Emerge, to move out of something and come into view, like how she slowly emerged from her darkest struggles back into acting. And tribute, an act showing deep respect and admiration, seen in that massive wave of love poured out by her friends and fans after her sudden passing. Now, let's turn our attention to a really practical idiom connected to our story: to go off the deep end. If someone goes off the deep end, it means they lose control of their emotions, act irrationally, or have a severe mental or emotional breakdown. The logic and origin of this phrase come directly from swimming pools. A swimming pool has a shallow end where it's safe to stand and a deep end where you cannot touch the bottom. If you suddenly fall or jump into the deep end without being prepared, you are in over your head, struggling to survive and completely out of control. This idiom is highly relevant because Hayden Panettiere actually used this exact phrase in a 2026 podcast to describe her own struggles with addiction. She said, "I felt like I was going off the deep end." Let's look at natural ways you can use this. When he lost his job, he went off the deep end and sold all his belongings. Or, she was handling the stress well, but the bad news made her go off the deep end. Here is your usage challenge. Think of a movie character who experiences just too much pressure.
Can you write a sentence describing the exact moment they finally go off the deep end?
As we conclude Hayden Panettiere's story, I want to leave you with a thought. When we look back at public figures who lived highly visible, sometimes painful lives, do we remember them for their darkest moments, or do we remember the light and truth they ultimately tried to share with the world? If you enjoy learning with us today and want to practice these words, discuss the idiom, or share your thoughts on the story, please join our learning community on Telegram at @FluentMind. Keep practicing, keep engaging with the stories around you, and I will see you in the next lesson.